Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Outlander is the show about the nurse from 1945 who went back in time to 1743. She's now stuck in a castle. She's just been given an apothecary and told that maybe she might want to do a wee bit of healing around the castle, but they're not going to let her go until they can figure out whether or not they can trust her, because they think she might be an English spy. Anyway, she's also met this really hot guy called Jamie, but she still misses her husband Frank, who's a bookish professor from Oxford. Well, what happens in episode 3? Let's have a look. So, this week it starts off with a cheeky little bit of cinematic sleight of hand. First, we get the turnabout of Frank and Claire at the train station. They're doing the old "I'm off to war" shtick. But hold on, it's Claire that's going off, and it's poor wee Frank that has to do the little wobbly lip of goodbye. "Goodbye, Claire." Well, turns out that was all just a memory. Claire's actually doing the ice bucket challenge. Then Claire starts to tell Mrs. Fitz about how she's actually a time traveller. "No, Claire, this is a terrible idea." But phew, turns out it was all a dream. In fact, she's just keeping to herself. She's making a wee bit of medicine, doing her nursery bit around the castle, footering around in the kitchen, all while getting followed around by Angus and Rupert. You see, Claire's not daft. She wants the people of the castle to trust her, but unfortunately in the process she's kind of making herself a wee bit indispensable to the people of the castle, and to call them scrawny wee bum, which she has to massage. Now, out of all the nudity so far in the series, this is probably the least sexy. No offence, Carrie. You do your job well, but no, it's just not happening. You're just not Jamie. So, having not really learned much from last week, Claire gets back on the bevy, but this time it actually helps her out, as Jamie comes over to have a wee chat with her and Leary. You know, Leary being the wee blonde lass from last week who was going to get beaten up. But even though she's absolutely gaga for Jamie, he's only got eyes for Claire. And then he ends up sneaking her away to the apothecary, where they have a few wee looks, and not really much else, but you know, it's all very sexy. So, of course, that doesn't actually stop him from snogging the absolute face off of wee Leary the next day. But, you know, he's a young lad, doesn't really knows what he's doing, hasn't really quite got women figured out yet, and, you know, if it's offered to you on a plate, most of the time, you're going to take it. It's probably that makes Claire start buggering off out of the castle and down to the local town of Cranesmuir, where, on her way down, she ends up meeting a wee boy who's supposedly being possessed by the devil, and she also meets Father Bane, a very scary old priest, played with some gusto by the guy who played Percy on Blackadder. Really getting in everybody in this show. Now, one of these visits down to Cranesmuir, she ends up going round to Gaelus's house. You remember Gaelus, the ginger, probably a witch from the last episode? Now, Gaelus ends up sitting there, chatting away to Claire, making strange sort of weird comments, acting a bit like a sort of scatterbrained hippie, and then at one point even pulling her skirt up to reveal a very bright red pair of shoes, which look all for the world a little bit like a pair of ruby slippers. Now, oblique classic movie references out the way, which may be completely lost on Claire as most of the things that Gaelus say are. It's pretty obvious at this point that she's got something she's trying to say, and she really, really wants to know what's going on with Claire. Why? Well, guess we'll find out later in the show. And just as things are starting to get interesting, Jamie turns up to whisk Claire back off up to the castle. But Claire wants to go somewhere else first. See, she wants to go and look at the old, scary, spooky ruins, where apparently everyone's going and getting possessed by the devil. And when she's up there, happens to notice that some of the plants there look an awful lot like food, and happen to be poisonous. So quick as a whistle, boom, she's back off, and she saves the lad, makes an enemy of Father Bane, and ends up with the whole castle thinking she's a bit peculiar. Well, there you go. And it seems bad enough, but at that point, a Welsh harp player sings an old song about a lassie falling through time through a stone circle, and then she gets home again. So Claire thinks, maybe, just maybe, she's going to get home again, and hope is renewed. So what did I think of episode 3? I thought it was pretty good. I actually really enjoyed it. I especially enjoyed the opening with all the different turnarounds, with the bits with Frank and Claire, and the bits where she was telling Mrs. Fitz what was happening, and all that happened to be dreams and memories, and you didn't really know what was going on from one minute to the next. That was a really, really good way to unsettle your audience and keep them interested, especially when not an awful lot happens for a lot of the episode. I also love to see the town of Cranesmuir. It was really, really nice. I'm not exactly sure where they filmed that, but it looked a genuinely authentic oldie town. And in fact, it was actually shot in a real town rather than on a set. It was absolutely brilliant. And it just goes to show it's amazing what you can actually find if you just foot around in the Highlands in Scotland. It was also great to get to see Jamie again and get to see Gellis. Gellis actually showing that there really is something going on with her, something that's really mysterious. And the way they're tantalising you with little tidbits here and there just makes it all the more interesting. We also got to see our great scene with Colm and Claire. Any scene with Colm and Claire is genuinely going to be great because Katrina Balfe and Gary Lewis are both fantastic actors and they play off each other really, really beautifully. But again, this wouldn't be grumpy opinions if I didn't have something to complain about. So, this week, I didn't actually have that much to say. One thing I would say is I was a bit confused about the fact that Claire seemed to be able to just pop up and down from Cranesmuir anytime she liked. And then halfway through the episode, Dougal popped up and said he was going to take her the next day, which kind of implied that she wasn't really allowed to go out by herself. Now, maybe that was just something that came up in editing, but I don't remember that being the case in the book, and here it was in the TV show. But it's not a big complaint. Other than that, there's maybe just a little bit too much footering about back and forward, a little bit too much of just the same as before. If you're not massively invested in the story of Claire and Jamie and that romance, you'll maybe find that them sitting talking to each other is a little bit too much. Now, this week, I don't really think that was a problem. But, some viewers might not like that. They might find it's a bit much. But other than that, I really didn't have any issues this week. I mean, it's been pretty exciting. It's been interesting. The actors are doing amazingly. It looks beautiful. The whole thing's generally coming together absolutely brilliantly. It couldn't be any better. And the small divergences they're taking from the books are absolutely fantastic. They only add to the story. They don't take anything away. So no, generally, I'm really impressed. So till next week, which should be even more interesting considering there's apparently a boar hunt, and there's a shinty match, and a whole load of people gathering together. I'm just excited. So I'll see you here next week. Until then, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.